Now, this is one of my favourite and potentially one of the most underrated, just because, I mean, people seem to like it, but I don't see it cited in top 10 lists near often enough. I don't know if I'd put Future Stock in top 10. I was tempted, considering the idea when I'm watching it again now, because it's one of the best takedowns of a 1980s cultural disposition, and one of the, well, and in a sense, because insofar as like the American sort of economic culture was entirely downstream of the 1980s, and the 1990s was only a super different distinction from it, was really quite superficial. And then in the 2000s, when you had like, if the 80s is defined partly by Reagan's sort of tax cuts for the wealthy leading to poorer conditions for people below them, the Bush administration, whilst it's known for what all the havoc it wreaked overseas, and it did doubled the number of these. And so, I mean, this is very early. This is episode 2000, but you're on you're at the precipice of this sort of era where the 1980s is probably until the 2000s, like that the 80s has been like probably the most influential decade upon our current time. And you can talk about the 60s and all of the cultural cosmetics that were promoted in these progressive / environmental values. However, how much those haven't budged at the power of capital really 1 inch, and the fact is it's so much to do with the bulwark that was implemented and sort of orchestrated in the 1980s in the Western world, and they really. Then it's fitting that the episode brings up the idea of image a lot, because that is how capital's managed to sort of flourish and like sort of stay under everyone's radar, is via posturing as sort of very friendly, nice, and so egalitarian, even if they're not willing to share their golf courses. Now, Future Stock's one of the best scripts in the show's history. I think Steve Castle, aka that guy, apparently according to the commentary, his name was Steve Castle in the script, and that guy was a gag that came up a bit later. It's possibly my favorite one-off character in the show's history. I assume there's a couple other characters that would sort of wrestle for that spot. Although I just it's such an extraordinary execution. It's like it's a little bit like I mean, RoboCop was made at the time, and it's almost like looking at the decade with that sort of cynical lens in retrospect. Whereas RoboCop's taking the idea of like a very nationalized institution like a police force becoming corporatized, and the consequences of that dealing with issues as relevant or powerful as worker discontent and efforts to sort of I guess unionize or protest against people being made redundant via machinery, or just the idea of sort of hostile behind the scenes violent interaction with criminals, so that you can because to the corporate world, the vanquishing of crime isn't as useful as it is to a traditional state, because the criminals are going to be buying your products and making you more powerful, whereas
they privatize prisons as well.
That's true. And whereas like the say the traditional like criminal mafia can disempower the monopoly of violence from a state, the monopoly on violence in a group of criminals actually might be better for capital than it being with a nationalized institution. Anyway, Future Stock, I think, it's a very strong Fry episode, if nothing else, but I also think it's a really sort of cynical, but like I like the boldness to depict the crew as sort of very selfish and in it for themselves, and willing to become millionaires even if it meant mum buying out the company and then all going their separate ways, never seeing each other again. It's a nice illustration of how Futurama, and I guess sitcoms at large, decided to like tarnish the sentimental idea of a television cast at like the turn of the millennium there. This is something that the Seinfeld cast would do, that the Simpsons would do.
Because it was a sitcom cliche that we're all family.
Yeah, like obviously like the people in All in the Family or are dead, even Married with Children would probably capot to we're a family, you know what I mean?
I can imagine like the last episode of Cheers, they're like, we're all just one big family.
Yeah. Frasier might have acted differently, the show, though. Who knows? But, no, I think Future Stock's very brilliant, and I just think in everything it seems to set out to do, I think it does an A+ job. I think it's, like, every piece of dialogue's fantastic. It's the Apple ad, everything said by Steve Castle, that guy. One of the great quotes in any show is, "I'm proud to be the shepherd of this herd of sharks."
Yeah.
Just like... There's so much fun you can extrapolate from just that one line.
It's a very snappy episode. It feels like the whole script was just written by riffing. Like, what does Leela even say? Like, Toad the Sprocket?
Toad the Wet Sprocket. That's a band.
Sorry?
It's a band.
Yeah. They're like a punk band, right?
I don't know if they're punk, but they were for 90s.
Oh, no, sorry, I'm confusing them. Yeah. They're like a college rock or something like that, I think.
Yeah, some nonsense.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's quite Hootie and the Blowfish, but it makes sense for the name.
And then the lady just says, like, Kajigga. Yeah, it's just jokes in this episode, essentially. Like, even like you mentioned, the character has a name, but then they end up just settling on calling him that guy from just like probably a riff that came later, as they're writing that scene or whatever.
Because I probably realised that, we didn't write in his introduction to his name.
Yeah.
We just call him that guy.
Fuck it. Yeah, just keep it going. Like, this episode feels very, like laid back in that it has no formalism. It's almost like the opposite of the last episode we talked about. Godfellas. But then it's just so like kinetic in its joke telling and its lines and its wordplay and silly concepts. Like similar to like you described once that South Park episode with sexual harassment panda.
That's hilarious.
Which is like them on like a
Isn't that fascism? No, because we don't call it that.
Yeah, they're just on like some tired fever dream because they're working on the movie or something.
Yeah.
And this episode sort of has a similar like kind of energy to that.
Yeah.
Where it's like a non-standard Futurama episode. It's like the Homer Goes to College of Futurama or something.
Yeah, but the difference is actually compared to Homer Goes to College is this episode rounds up being really like sort of coherent and congruent as sort of a act of, I guess, playful social criticism. Yeah. Obviously, they was all riffed out, but I suspect they sort of, went over it and sort of just, made sure it cohered. And maybe they didn't even need to do much for it to be that way. And it's an interesting case of Futurama. I don't know how often Futurama... There's a lot of like sort of existential sci-fi, sort of metaphysical ideas explored on Futurama. I don't know how often it went into like actual social analysis in the way that like cultural critiques in the way that The Simpsons might occasionally. Maybe Poplars, which is sort of the environmental ethos. But it was very interesting for Futurama to sort of very overtly critique a the socio-cultural sort of pathology that way. Like it's quite put it like this, it's the kind of episode that like I guarantee you the sort of media pundits of the sort of cultural right would accuse you of having like a liberal bias.
Yeah, probably. It kind of like it is that, but it's also it's not like unprecedented in the sense that you could think of the episode as like a riff on even something like Wall Street. Like, even right at the end of the 80s, they were already riffing on that whole thing, right?
Oliver Stone, very sort of... we know his politics.
Yeah, he's definitely not... In a similar way, I'm sure the right-wing people would have probably riffed on Wall Street.
I think they did, or do, yeah.
Yeah.
Or took it the wrong way. They can. I never thought that was a very good movie, personally.
But as much as, like, that phenomenon exists, like, it's a phenomenon that's very, like, heavy in the cultural zeitgeist. Like, there's been plenty of, like, dissections of it. Even up until, like, Wolf of Wall Street happened.
A better example, I guess, is the David Mamet, Glengarry Glen Ross, for example.
Okay, yeah. That's from the 90s, right?
I think the play may have came earlier, but definitely the film is from 93.
Yeah.
Very strong film.
But, yeah, no, for a cartoon, it is definitely...
For a sitcom script, I think it's just one of the most superb distillations of that sort of mentality, why it might be toxic, why people are taken by it, and just also the sheer ridiculousness of it all.
Yeah, image, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like you couldn't.
It's a very effective takedown.
You couldn't prepare a better sitcom script to, sort of give that 80s pathology an autopsy. You know what I mean?
They never even deliver a parcel. Like somehow Mom Corporate was gonna buy them just because they got enough advertising. I said, press somehow. That made the stocks worth enough that they all could have been millionaires. Yeah, it is sort of playful. There definitely was an outline or like a script of the episode with all these things in there, but the jokes as well. I don't know. For some reason, they just feel like they. Like I always say this about Futurama episodes, that they come a mile a minute. But this is one of the ones that definitely is like the gold medal of that.
Yeah.
It's if I would include it in a top 10 of the whole series, it would be for that reason.
Yeah, there's but God, yeah, I can't think of. Yeah, got to be the greatest one of the greatest pieces of sitcom satire in the history of United States television. And I remember before I was tempted to share some other lines that always spring into my mind when the sexual harassment Panda South Park episode is brought up.
Oh, before that, the blank thing in this episode is the best line.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. blank, you're not looking at the big picture. Representing everyone is Gerald Broflovsky. And on the other side, representing everyone is Gerald Broflovsky. And you got the whole, we don't take kindly to people who don't take kindly. And, it's because I'm a panda, isn't it? It is because you're a panda, yes. Like, they're not logically funny, but, like, they are. Like, because that's only, they're just funny when you're, like, not thinking about it in, like, a Sleepless Haze or something.
Yeah.
And you think it's hilarious, but, like, it's you when you're like more sober and sort of just aware, you don't write like that because it's so like, I don't know, it's like such primary school just like random humor. Like it just doesn't, like it's funny and just for just nonsense reasons, but like it is funny. Like it doesn't have to be logical. It doesn't have to have, blah blah blah. Follows in like some teacher's course. And,
pretty much half of Monty Python is that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like that's so like fever dream and sort of like like that sort of acid generation.
Yeah.
I mean, not that they necessarily partook in that, but as far as I know, Gilliam looks like and seems like the sort who would have, and he was the one from California, Sue.
And they're probably friends with Spike Jones. Sorry, not Spike Jones. Spike Milligan.
Did Milligan drop acid?
Maybe. I would assume so.
I exterminated him. That's a horrible sketch to reference. Milligan.
Someone showed me that actually.
I think I should. No.
Yeah, that's right. And then these old people I work with remembered it.
Oh my god, it's horrible, but it's just like the ridiculousness of it all. Like if they put it like this, if that Dalek sketch was a parody, like we would think it's absolutely brilliant. You know what I mean? I guess it's a shame that it was meant to be presented as serious or an actual attempt at humor rather than making fun of something else that was taking the humor more with more conviction. But Milligan, he had they had that. Obviously Milligan's The Goon Show in the 50s with Sellers and the other guy who I don't remember. But Milligan, he had that show he did, Q, which I think is where that Dalek sketch is from. They premiered that, I think, in just as they were still working on Monty Python, and the group were sort of taken aback at how Milligan was just while they were working on their show, they just put something out that was like what they wanted to do. Not that he knew what they were doing or whatever. I don't know if that maybe they knew, I'm not sure. I'm personally not sure if they would have known him or not. Or definitely afterward they probably did after they were successful. But that was just amazing how that current was just in the air,
Yeah, no, definitely.
But I guess fortunately for the Pythons, they did a lot better than Q did. I mean, Q had a few seasons over the course of the next 10 years or whatever, but it wasn't the phenomenon that Python was, or even the Goodies was, as far as I know.
Sure, yeah. Or Futurama.
Well, yeah, it's a couple of decades later, but yeah. Well, Doctor Who at the time, until Mary Whitehouse got angry at the Doctor being drowned. That was great. Just getting angry over nothing.
Cursed.
Yeah. Oh well, I suppose I don't have much else to share about Future Stock.
Nah, just
reiterate again. I'm a huge
listen to
fan of
Safety
it.
Dance.
Men Without Hats, right? Yeah, they have an whole album, and that's on there. That I remember the version on that album is different to the one you hear as a single.
No,
a little bit different.
Okay. The extended.
I remember the album being kind of solid, but like not.
The dub mix.
I heard it back 8 years ago or something. It's kind of fine, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you everyone. I'll see you later.
Catch ya.